How trade led to battles. Through the early 18th century, the conflict between the company and the Nawabs of Bengal intensified. After the death of Aurangzeb, the Bengal Nawabs asserted their power and autonomy as other regional powers were doing at that time. Murshid Quli Khan was followed by Alwardi Khan and then Sirajudullah as the Nawab of Bengal. Each of them was a strong ruler. They refused to grant the company concessions, demanded large tributes for the company's right to trade, denied it any right to mint coins, and stopped it from extending its fortifications. Accusing the company of deceit, they claimed that the company was depriving the Bengal government of huge amounts of revenue and undermining the authority of the Nawab. It was refusing to pay taxes, writing disrespectful letters, and trying to humiliate the Nawab and his officials. The company, on its part, declared that the unjust demands of the local officials were ruining the trade of the company, and trade could flourish only if the duties were removed. It was also convinced that to expand trade, it had to enlarge its settlements, buy up villages, and rebuild its forts. The conflict led to confrontations and finally culminated in the famous Battle of Plassey. The Battle of Plassey. When Alwardi Khan died in 1756, Sirajudullah became the Nawab of Bengal. The company was worried about his power and keen on a puppet ruler who would willingly give trade concessions and other privileges. Puppet, well, it means literally a toy that you can move with strings. The term is used disapprovingly to refer to a person who is controlled by someone else. So it tried, though without success, to help one of Sirajuddaullah's rivals become the Nawab. An infuriated Sirajuddaulah asked the company to stop meddling in the political affairs of his dominion, stop fortification, and pay the revenues. After negotiations failed, the Nawab marched with 30,000 soldiers to the English factory at Qasim Bazar, captured the company officials, locked the warehouse, disarmed all Englishmen, and blockaded English ships. Then he marched to Calcutta to establish control over the company's fort there. On hearing the news of the fall of Calcutta, company officials in Madras sent forces under the command of Robert Clive, reinforced by naval fleets. Prolonged negotiations with the Nawab followed. Finally, in 1757, Robert Clive led the company's army against Sirajuddaulah at Plassey. One of the main reasons for the defeat of the Nawab was that the forces led by Mir Jafar, one of Sirajuddaullah's commanders, never fought the battle. Clive had managed to secure his support by promising to make him Nawab after crushing Sirajuddaulah. The Battle of Plassey became famous because it was the first major victory the company won in India. After the defeat at Plassey, Sirajuddaulah was assassinated and Mir Jafar made the Nawab. The company was still unwilling to take over the responsibility of administration. Its prime objective was the expansion of trade. If this could be done without conquest, through the help of local rulers who were willing to grant privileges, then territories need not be taken over directly. Soon the company discovered that this was rather difficult, for even the puppet Nawabs were not always as helpful as the company wanted them to be. After all, they had to maintain a basic appearance of dignity and sovereignty if they wanted respect from their subjects. What could the company do? When Mir Jafar protested, the company deposed him and installed Mir Qasim in his place. When Mir Qasim complained, he in turn was defeated in a battle fought at Buxar in 1764, driven out of Bengal, and Mir Jafar was reinstalled. The Nawab had to pay rupees 5 lakh every month, but the company wanted more money to finance its wars and meet the demands of trade and its other expenses. It wanted more territories and more revenue. By the time Mir Jafar died in 1765, the mood of the company had changed. Having failed to work with puppet Nawabs, Clive declared, "We must indeed become Nawabs ourselves." Finally, in 1765, the Mughal emperor appointed the company as the Diwan of the provinces of Bengal. The Diwani allowed the company to use the vast revenue resources of Bengal. This solved a major problem that the company had earlier faced. From the early 18th century, its trade with India had expanded, but it had to buy most of the goods in India with gold and silver imported from Britain. This was because, at this time, Britain had no goods to sell in India. The outflow of gold from Britain slowed after the Battle of Plassey and entirely stopped after the assumption of Diwani. Now, revenues from India could finance company expenses. These revenues could be used to purchase cotton and silk textiles in India, maintain company troops, and meet the cost of building the company fort and offices at Calcutta. The promise of riches. The territorial ambitions of the mercantile East India Company were viewed with distrust and doubt in England. After the Battle of Plassey, Robert Clive wrote to William Pitt, one of the principal secretaries of the state to the English monarch, on 7th January 1759 from Calcutta. But so large a sovereignty may possibly be an object too extensive for a mercantile company. I flatter myself that there will be little or no difficulty in obtaining the absolute possession of these rich kingdoms. Now, I leave you to judge whether an income yearly of 2 million sterling with the possession of 3 provinces be an object deserving the public attention. The Nawab Complains. In 1733, the Nawab of Bengal said this about the English traders. When they first came into the country, they petitioned the then government in a humble manner for liberty to purchase a spot of ground to build a factory house upon, which was no sooner granted, but they built a strong fort, surrounded it with a ditch which had communication with the river, and mounted a great number of guns upon the walls. They have enticed several merchants and others to go and take protection under them, and they collect a revenue which amounts to rupees 1 lakh. They rob and plunder and carry great number of the king's subjects of both sexes into slavery into their own country. Company officials become Nabobs. What did it mean to be Nawabs? It meant, of course, that the company acquired more power and authority. But it also meant something else. Each company servant began to have visions of living like Nawabs. After the Battle of Plassey, the actual Nawabs of Bengal were forced to give land and vast sums of money as personal gifts to company officials. Robert Clive himself amassed a fortune in India. He had come to Madras, now Chennai, from England in 1743 at the age of 18. When in 1767 he left India, his Indian fortune was worth 4,01,102 pounds. Interestingly, when he was appointed governor of Bengal in 1764, he was asked to remove corruption in company administration, but he was himself cross-examined in 1772 by the British Parliament which was suspicious of his vast wealth. Although he was acquitted, he committed suicide in 1774. However, not all company officials succeeded in making money like Clive. Many died an early death in India due to disease and war, and it would not be right to regard all of them as corrupt and dishonest. Many of them came from humble backgrounds, and their uppermost desire was to earn enough in India, return to Britain, and lead a comfortable life. Those who managed to return with wealth led flashy lives and flaunted their riches. They were called Nabobs, an anglicized version of the Indian word Nawab. They were often seen as upstarts and social climbers in British society and were ridiculed or made fun of in plays and cartoons. Subscribe to my channel. Click on bell icon to get notification about new video.